This is another in the series, First Reads, where I read a poem by a poet I don't know or know very little, and just do a first reading as if I'm just here to enjoy it. I'm not trying to teach it, I'm not trying to explain it, I'm just trying to have an experience of it. This is what got me into poetry in the first place, and so that's what I'm doing here. This is Vine Maple by Tina Blade, who I don't know at all. This is in the Apple Valley Review. The Apple Valley Review tends to be kind of more narrative-oriented work. The Vine Maple. So I picked this because of the title. I don't know anything about it, but I have seen Vine Maple. Vine Maple is something mostly on the west coast of the U.S., maybe Canada. We don't really have it where I live that much outside of, a transplant. But Vine Maple is a type of plant, like a small shrub maple. And, it's pretty. Gets a nice reddish color in the fall. So Vine Maple by Tina Blade. All I know is the title, Vine Maple. I like to look at a form whenever I look at something. So I'm just going to go through here and see this. Just look at this. I'm not sure why N is highlighted here, if that's a mistake or if that's really it. This is written in quatrains. Let's see if there's any meter to it. I remember when Mom asked me just before she died. It's 13. Tina, was I a good mother? This small town girl is 12 who loved dancing and mink asked me as if she didn't know. It's 14, so it's a variation in line length. Died girl, no glass. So it's not a rhyme scheme either. I'm going to assume this is kind of a free verse. Poem written in quatrains. And go from there. So let's just read through it. There's a lot of I mean, when I just look at the poem before I've even read it, it looks like it's going to be some kind of personal poem because there's, I'm just looking, I-O-N was just my computer highlighting I. There's a lot of I in this. First 3 lines there, first 3 lines here, all start with I. So very personal-oriented something. I remember when Mom asked me just before she died, Tina, was I a good mother? So Tina is actually the poet's name, so it kind of, plays off that whole idea of, who's speaking in a poem, the speaker or like the poet. This kind of blurs that line a little bit. But Tina, was I a good mother? So her mother's asking her if she was a good mother. That's a loaded question always from a parent to a child. This small town girl who loved dancing and mink asked me as if she didn't know. So she's telling something about her mother in this. She's a small town girl. She likes dancing and mink. Tells you a little bit about her already, but asks as if she didn't know. And I don't know. I don't. It's one of those things as a parent, I'm not sure you know whether you were good. You try to be good. We don't know about the mother, but it feels like a loaded question here as if the mother wasn't that great of a mother. And she's asking here at the end, but we'll get there. The Vine Maple at the window leaned in and touched the glass. Now, this is an interesting image because it feels like the leaning in. It's almost as if the Vine Maple here has an intent to lean in and touch the glass. It's almost like it's doing something with this question, as if it's touching in itself. And the weird thing is, with this Vine Maple at the window leaning in, I'm not sure when it's leaning in. Is it leaning in when the mother asked that question? Is that when it's leaning in? I'm not sure. Or if this is some other different timeline. Because this is a memory poem. I was thinking you were not a good mother. So this is kind of hesitation, this pause. I was thinking. The repetition. Here is, how do you answer somebody who wasn't necessarily a good mother? How do you answer that right before the person's going to die? And you're, trying to think about the person's feelings. I mean, I'm adding that a little bit here. It seems to be stressed, though, when the mother's dying. We're not a good mother. I didn't know she was brave to ask. I didn't know she missed me. So there's some stuff here we don't know as a reader, like what the distance is between them, why she would need to be brave enough to ask this. We don't really know that, but here the speaker is telling us that, she didn't realize the mother was brave to ask this. The Vine Maple at the window leaned in, its thin branches lifted, graceful as the arms of a girl. So it's the same thing in this last line of this stanza. This vine maple is like leaning in, and its branches are graceful as the arms of a girl. And the mother here has, been called a girl, a small town girl, as if the vine maple and the mother are somehow related in this poem. And the vine maple is doing something, like it's leaning in with that question. I refused to think she was brave. I didn't know I'd miss her. I refused to think she was brave. You can interpret that, I think, lots of different ways based on the "you were not a good mother," suggestion. Is kind of a hesitancy or a anger at the mom for whatever she grew up with. I don't know, but it kind of suggests that I didn't know I would miss her. Even somebody who might not have been a good mom, a good parent, you're still you can still miss them, even though you might not have expected that in life, even though you might have argued with them or whatever you did. I hated what I remembered: her brandy, her dancing, the smell of cigarettes. So that sense I had earlier on that there is this kind of bitterness or that she didn't grow up well, seems to be coming out here later on. The branches reaching for her, for me. So this is that, the end part of this stanza as well. The vine maple reaches in. The branches have been described like an arm earlier, so it's almost as if her mother's arms here at death are reaching for her. Whose arms? Which girl? And it's hard to tell who's doing the reaching. Like as a child, you might be reaching for the arms of, a loving parent, but that parent is caught up in alcoholism, whatever it is, or, reverse in, old age, a mother who has not been the greatest mother, trying to reach out and kind of correct that at the end, or at least not want to think that of themselves at the end, reaching out. We don't know whose arms, which girl. I knew the dry sound in the afternoon of the liquor cabinet opening. So this is how many speaker tells you that she remembers this sound of the cabinet opening. I hated her drinking. This is that repeating almost a little bit. I hated when I remembered her brandy, and now it's I hated her drinking, her dancing, her cigarettes. I loved the smell of her joy perfume, how she might be different if she didn't drink. So this kind of, desire, the child's desire, like to have that mother who doesn't do all those, things that get in the way, but also the things you love about that person no matter what. I listen for the click of the liquor cabinet opening. This is almost a repeat of that line at the last stanza. I prayed for the day that door would stay shut. This desire for things not to be. Thinking through this question of, was I a good mother? And, inside thinking, no, not necessarily not. You weren't a good mother. But not knowing how to answer that. How would I be different if she didn't drink? That emotion, like how would your whole life have changed if that person had been different? Was I a good mother? She asked at the very last minute. And we say the very last minute, so we were told she was going to die earlier, so very last minute, I'm supposing before death. The cabinet door forever opening and closing. The cabinet door forever opening and closing, which is an interesting image of this idea of death, being final, but in the cabinet door, the one that kept opening and closing in her childhood is still there, opening and closing, for her in this memory of her mother. The small down girl asking me as if I, of all people, would know. Which is an interesting kind of last comment to end this on. It's like her mother almost brought back to youth asking. Her mother brought back to childhood as a small town girl asking her as if I of all people would know. Well, there's that kind of weirdness in which if you haven't had a good parent, do you completely understand what it means to have had one? Your whole life has been informed by that person and what they've done. How would I be different if she didn't drink? Would you know it? Is in essence the question at the end. Would you know it? This feels like a fairly personal poem. The vine maple comes in as as this kind of image in this reaching in, this something to remember as a person, this main person in your life. It's kind of reaching in, and it's become fragile at the end. Same times, the vine maple is a this beautiful little plant. I don't know if that's being played off of anymore. This question of how do you deal with your own memories of your parent who wasn't necessarily a good parent. How do you answer them in the end when they ask you that? When you maybe don't want to hurt their feelings about it. What does that mean? How did that inform you? So this poem deals with kind of all of these questions. So Tina Blade, is there anything about Tina Blade? Yes, there's a little thing about her here. MFA for University of Oregon. Yeah, that makes sense with the vine maple, and then there's a list of things she's working on. So nice little poem, fairly straightforward. This is Apple Valley Review.